Welcome to Silent Night Archives, a quiet place where the noise of the modern world slowly fades away, and where history gently unfolds in a calm and peaceful rhythm. Tonight, you are invited to relax, slow down, and allow your mind to drift softly through the distant past, far away from busy streets, glowing screens, and the constant rush of everyday life. Here there is no urgency, no pressure, and nothing you need to accomplish. This moment is simply for rest, curiosity, and calm reflection before we begin our journey. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose. Feel the air filling your lungs. Hold it gently for a moment, and then slowly breathe out again, letting the tension leave your body. Allow your shoulders to relax, your jaw to loosen, and your breathing to become steady and slow. Imagine the weight of the day gradually lifting away, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. With each breath you take, your body becomes a little more comfortable, and your mind becomes a little quieter. There is nothing you need to focus on too strongly. You do not need to remember every detail or follow every word perfectly. Simply let the story flow around you like a calm river. If your thoughts drift away, it is perfectly fine. Just allow them to wander gently while the sound of history carries you deeper into relaxation tonight. We travel back thousands of years, long before the rise of famous empires like Rome or Persia, long before medieval castles and knights, long before the world that we recognize today began to take shape. Our journey leads us to one of the earliest civilizations humanity ever created, a mysterious and remarkable culture that emerged in the fertile lands between two great rivers. This ancient world is known as Sumer, the land of the Sumerians, a civilization that flourished more than 5,000 years ago in a region historians now call Mesopotamia, a vast and fertile land located between the great rivers Tigris River and Euphrates River, where rich soil and seasonal floods allowed early farmers to grow abundant crops and build the very first cities the world had ever seen. Imagine standing on a quiet plain at sunset thousands of years ago, the sky glowing with warm shades of gold and orange, a gentle wind moving across wide fields of barley and wheat. In the distance, you see clusters of mud brick houses rising from the flat land, narrow streets winding between them. And towering above the city stands an enormous step structure known as a ziggurat, a massive temple rising toward the heavens like a staircase built for the gods. These early cities were unlike anything humanity had seen before, places where thousands of people lived together, worked together, and built complex societies that required organization, leadership, and cooperation. Among the most famous of these cities were Uruk, and Lagash, places that once stood as centers of trade, religion, and political power in the earliest chapters of human civilization. But life in these early cities was very different from life today. There were no machines, no electricity, no paved roads or modern comforts. Most people spent their days working the land, tending crops beside carefully constructed irrigation canals, shaping clay into pottery, weaving textiles, or trading goods in lively markets filled with voices, animals, and the sounds of daily life. The people of Sumer were also remarkable for another reason. They created something that would forever change the course of human history. They invented one of the very first systems of writing, known as cuneiform, using small wedge-shaped marks pressed into soft clay tablets. Scribes recorded everything from trade agreements and taxes to myths, prayers, and epic stories about gods and heroes. These clay tablets, baked by the sun and preserved for thousands of years beneath the soil, allow modern historians to hear faint echoes of voices from a world long gone. Through them, we learn about the laws that governed these early societies, the goods traded between cities, the rituals performed in temples, and the beliefs people held about the mysterious forces that shaped their lives. Religion played a central role in the world of the Sumerians. They believed their cities were protected by powerful gods and goddesses who controlled the forces of nature. Storms, floods, harvests, and the fate of human beings. Towering temples stood at the heart of every major city, and priests performed ceremonies meant to maintain harmony between the human world and the divine realm. As night slowly falls over the ancient city, oil lamps flicker softly inside small homes. Families gather after long days of work. The distant sounds of animals and quiet conversation drift through the narrow streets. And high above the rooftops, the great ziggurat watches silently over the sleeping city. In this video, we will slowly explore this ancient world together. We will walk through the early streets of Sumerian cities, observe the daily lives of farmers, merchants, priests, and rulers, and discover how one of humanity's first civilizations laid the foundations for many things we take for granted today. Writing, organized government, complex trade networks, and the idea of cities as centers of culture and power. But remember, there is no need to stay fully awake or focused as the story unfolds. This journey is designed to be calm and gentle, allowing your thoughts to slow and your body to rest. If your eyes grow heavy and your mind begins to drift towards sleep, simply allow it to happen naturally. So once again, take a slow, deep breath. Feel the air filling your lungs and gently release it. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of an ancient Sumerian city as the last light of the sun fades across the desert plains. The warm glow of torches beginning to appear along the streets, and somewhere in the distance, the quiet murmur of a civilization that lived thousands of years before our time now. As the night grows calm and the ancient world slowly awakens around us, let us begin our peaceful journey into the forgotten history of the Sumerians and the story of the first civilization in human history. In the quiet expanse of the ancient world, long before the rise of empires and long before the stories that would later fill the pages of history, there was a land shaped gently by water and wind. A land where the earliest threads of civilization began to weave themselves into something new, something enduring, something that would echo across thousands of years. This land was Mesopotamia, the place between the rivers, resting in the broad cradle formed by the Tigris and the Euphrates, two great waterways that flowed down from the mountains of Anatolia and carried with them the promise of life. As we begin this gentle journey into the distant past, imagine the soft murmur of flowing water drifting across wide plains. Imagine the warm air of a region where summers stretched long and bright, and winters passed quietly with cool breezes sweeping over open fields. Imagine a landscape that was both challenging and generous, a place where the soil, when touched by the rivers, became rich and fertile, inviting early people to settle, to plant, and to grow. Thousands of years ago, long before the first cities rose, small groups of people moved through this region, following the rhythms of the seasons, gathering wild grains, hunting animals, and slowly learning the patterns of the land over time. These early communities began to notice that the wild grasses they collected grew especially well in the moist earth left behind after the rivers flooded. They saw that seeds scattered near the water's edge sprouted again the next year, and they began to understand that the land itself could be shaped, guided, and encouraged to provide food more reliably. This gentle shift from wandering to tending, from gathering to cultivating, unfolded slowly. Like the gradual brightening of dawn, there was no single moment when farming began. No sudden transformation. Instead, it was a quiet accumulation of knowledge, passed from one generation to the next. As people learned how to plant barley and wheat, how to store grain, and how to remain in one place long enough to watch their crops grow. As these early farming communities settled along the riverbanks, the land of Mesopotamia began to change. Small clusters of homes appeared, built from reeds and mud, simple structures that offered shelter from the sun and wind. Families worked together to clear fields, to plant seeds, and to harvest the grain that would sustain them through the year. The rivers, with their unpredictable floods, became both a blessing and a challenge, sometimes bringing nourishment, sometimes bringing destruction. To live in Mesopotamia was to live in a delicate balance with water, and it was this relationship that would eventually give rise to one of the first great innovations of human history: irrigation. At first, irrigation was simple: small channels dug by hand to guide water from the river toward nearby fields, shallow ditches that allowed farmers to bring moisture to the soil even when the river ran low. Over time, these channels grew longer and more complex, stretching farther from the riverbanks, allowing more land to be cultivated and supporting larger communities. The people who lived in this region learned to read the rivers, to anticipate their floods, and to work together to maintain the canals. This cooperation, born from necessity, slowly wove the fabric of early society, as families and neighbors relied on one another to keep the water flowing, to repair the channels, and to ensure that everyone had enough to survive. As the fields expanded and harvests grew more abundant, the settlements themselves began to change. What had once been small clusters of homes gradually became larger villages. And then, over many generations, these villages grew into towns, and eventually into the first cities the world had ever known. Among these early cities, one would rise to become a symbol of the dawn of civilization: Uruk. But before we reach the bustling streets of Uruk, let us linger a little longer in the early days, when the first signs of urban life were just beginning to appear. Imagine walking through one of these early settlements, perhaps around 4500 BCE, the air warm and still, the scent of damp earth rising from the fields, the homes built from sun-dried mud bricks, their walls smooth and cool to the touch, narrow pathways winding between them, children playing near the canals, their laughter drifting softly across the water. In the fields, farmers bend over rows of barley, their hands moving steadily, guided by knowledge passed down through countless seasons. Nearby, goats and sheep graze on the edges of the settlement, animals that had been gradually domesticated, providing milk, wool, and meat. The rhythm of daily life is slow and steady, shaped by the cycles of planting and harvest, by the rising and setting of the sun. As these communities grew, so too did the need for organization. Someone had to oversee the maintenance of the irrigation canals. Someone had to help settle disputes. Someone had to guide the distribution of grain during lean years. And so, gradually, leaders emerged, not kings in the way we might imagine later rulers, but respected figures who helped coordinate the work that kept the settlement alive. Over time, these roles became more formal, and the settlements themselves became more structured, with central areas for storage, for trade, and for communal gatherings. The earliest forms of administration began to take shape: simple records scratched onto clay tokens or tablets, marking the exchange of goods, the movement of grain, or the contributions of labor to the irrigation system. These small steps, taken slowly over centuries, laid the foundation for something extraordinary: the rise of the first true cities, Uruk. One of the earliest and most influential of these cities began as a modest settlement near the Euphrates River, but as the centuries passed, it grew into a thriving urban center, its population swelling, its buildings rising, its influence spreading across the region. By around 3500 BCE, Uruk had become one of the largest cities in the world, a place where tens of thousands of people lived, worked, and worshipped. But even as Uruk grew, it remained deeply connected to the land around it, to the fields that fed its people, and to the rivers that sustained its life. The canals that stretched outward from the city formed a vast network, carrying water to distant fields, supporting farmers who lived both within and beyond the city walls. The people of Uruk built temples dedicated to their gods, structures that rose above the surrounding homes, their walls decorated with intricate patterns, their courtyards filled with offerings of grain, fruit, and animals. These temples were not only places of worship, but also centers of administration, where priests and officials managed the distribution of resources, oversaw trade, and maintained the records that kept the city functioning. As we drift gently through this early urban landscape, imagine the soft hum of daily life, the quiet footsteps of workers carrying baskets of grain, the gentle splash of water flowing through the canals, the distant sound of animals in the fields, the warm glow of the sun reflecting off mud brick walls. Uruk was not alone in its rise. Other cities began to emerge across southern Mesopotamia, each shaped by the same forces of agriculture, irrigation, and cooperation. Among them were Ur, a city near the mouth of the Euphrates, and Lagash, a settlement that would grow into a powerful city-state in its own right. Ur, with its proximity to the marshlands and the sea, became a center of trade, its people building boats from reeds and wood, traveling along the waterways to exchange goods with distant regions. Lagash, surrounded by fertile fields, became known for its agricultural strength, its leaders overseeing vast irrigation networks that supported large populations. These early city-states were not isolated. They were connected by trade routes, by shared cultural practices, and by the ever-present rivers that flowed through the heart of the region. The people of Mesopotamia traded grain, textiles, pottery, and precious stones. They shared stories, beliefs, and technologies, creating a rich tapestry of early civilization. As the cities grew, so too did the complexity of daily life. New crafts emerged. Pottery became more refined, weaving more intricate, metalworking more advanced. Artisans shaped clay into vessels, carved stone into tools, and hammered copper into ornaments, each craft adding to the growing sophistication of the society. Writing, one of the most significant inventions in human history, began to take shape in this environment. At first, it was simple. A series of marks pressed into wet clay to record quantities of grain or livestock. But over time, these marks evolved into symbols, and the symbols into a system of writing known as cuneiform, a script that would be used for thousands of years. But in this first part of our journey, we remain in the early days, when writing was still young, when the cities were still growing, and when the people of Mesopotamia were just beginning to understand the possibilities of the world they were creating. As night settles gently over the plains, imagine the soft glow of oil lamps flickering inside the homes of Uruk, the quiet murmur of families sharing food, the distant sound of water flowing through the canals, the stars appearing one by one in the vast sky above, the same stars that guided travelers, farmers, and dreamers for countless generations. The story of the Sumerians is a story of patience, of gradual change, of people learning to live with the land and with one another. It is a story that unfolds slowly, like the steady flow of the rivers that shaped their world. And as we rest here at the beginning of this long and gentle history, we can feel the quiet strength of those early communities, the calm persistence that allowed them to build something lasting. In the next part of our journey, we will explore how these early cities continued to grow, how their leaders rose to power, how their temples became grander, and how their innovations shaped the world that followed. But for now, we remain here in the soft twilight of early Mesopotamia, listening to the rivers, feeling the warmth of the earth, and drifting slowly through the peaceful beginnings of civilization. As we continue our quiet journey through the early landscapes of Mesopotamia, let us drift forward in time, moving softly from the first farming communities into the age when the earliest cities began to take shape, when the patterns of life grew more intricate, and when the people of Sumer slowly transformed their world through patience, cooperation, and the steady rhythm of daily labor. The land remains the same in its essence. The broad plains stretching between the Tigris and Euphrates, the warm winds carrying the scent of river reeds, the soil rich with silt left behind by the seasonal floods. Yet the human presence upon this land has grown deeper, more rooted, more intentional. The settlements that once consisted of a few clustered homes have expanded, their boundaries stretching outward as families grow, as fields widen, and as the needs of the community become more complex. In these early centuries, the people of Sumer lived in harmony with the cycles of nature, rising with the sun, tending their crops, caring for their animals, and returning home as the sky shifted into soft shades of evening. Their lives were simple in many ways, yet filled with meaning, shaped by the land that sustained them and by the shared responsibilities that bound them together. As the settlements grew, the irrigation systems that supported them also expanded. The small channels dug by early farmers became longer, deeper, and more carefully maintained. The people learned to build levees to control the flow of water, to dig reservoirs to store it, and to create networks of canals that reached far beyond the riverbanks, allowing fields to flourish even during dry seasons. This mastery of water was one of the great achievements of early Mesopotamian society, and it required cooperation on a scale that had never been seen before. Entire communities worked together to clear silt from the canals, to repair breaches after floods, and to ensure that water reached every field. This shared labor strengthened the bonds between families and laid the foundation for the organized societies that would soon emerge. As the population increased, new roles began to appear within the settlements. Some people became skilled in pottery, shaping clay into vessels for storing grain and water. Others became weavers, creating cloth from wool and flax. Still others became carpenters, stoneworkers, or metal workers, each craft adding new layers to the growing complexity of daily life. Trade began to flourish as well, at first within the settlements themselves, and later between neighboring communities. People exchanged grain for pottery, wool for tools, and fish for woven cloth. Over time, these exchanges extended farther, reaching distant regions where materials such as timber, copper, and precious stones could be obtained. With trade came the need for record keeping, and so the earliest forms of writing continued to develop. The simple clay tokens used to represent goods gradually evolved into markings pressed into clay tablets, each symbol representing a quantity, an item, or a transaction. These early records were not stories or poems, but practical tools that helped the growing settlements manage their resources. As we drift gently through this period of early growth, imagine the soft sounds of daily life in a Sumerian village, the rhythmic tapping of a potter shaping clay, the quiet murmur of farmers discussing the condition of the canals, the gentle bleating of goats in the distance, the warm breeze carrying the scent of grain drying in the sun. Over many generations, these villages grew into towns, and some of these towns grew into cities. Among them were Uruk, Ur, and Lagash, each rising slowly from the plains, shaped by the hands and hopes of countless people, each becoming a center of culture, trade, and innovation. Uruk, which we touched upon in the first part of our journey, continued to expand, its population increasing, its buildings rising higher, its temples becoming more elaborate. The city became a place where thousands of people lived in close proximity, where markets bustled with activity, where artisans crafted goods of remarkable skill, and where the earliest forms of administration took shape. The heart of Uruk was its temple district, where large structures known as ziggurats began to appear. These stepped platforms, built from mud bricks, rose above the surrounding homes, their presence a symbol of the city's spiritual and political life. The temples were dedicated to the gods who were believed to watch over the city, gods associated with the sky, the earth, the waters, and the cycles of nature. The priests who served in these temples played an important role in the life of the city. They oversaw the storage of grain, the distribution of resources, and the maintenance of the irrigation systems. They kept records, organized labor, and ensured that the rituals honoring the gods were performed at the proper times. In this way, the temples became centers not only of worship, but also of governance, shaping the early structure of Sumerian society. As we wander slowly through the imagined streets of ancient Uruk, picture the gentle movement of people going about their tasks. Merchants arranging their goods in the marketplace, children carrying baskets of dates or figs, scribes sitting in shaded courtyards pressing symbols into soft clay, the air warm and filled with the quiet hum of life. Ur, another of the great early cities, grew along the lower reaches of the Euphrates, closer to the marshlands and the waters of the Persian Gulf. Its location made it a natural center for trade. Boats traveled along the river and through the marshes, carrying goods to and from distant regions. The people of Ur became skilled in navigation and boat building, crafting vessels from reeds and wood that glided smoothly across the water. The city itself grew around a central temple complex, much like Uruk, with homes, workshops, and markets spreading outward in a gentle pattern. The people of Ur cultivated fields of barley and wheat, raised sheep and goats, and produced textiles that were traded across the region. The city's prosperity grew steadily, supported by its strategic location and its strong agricultural base. Lachish, another important city-state, developed slightly later, but became known for its powerful rulers and its extensive irrigation networks. The leaders of Lachish invested heavily in the construction and maintenance of canals, ensuring that the fields surrounding the city remained fertile and productive. The city became a center of agriculture, its granaries filled with grain that supported a growing population. Each of these cities, though unique in its own way, shared common features. They were built from mud bricks, shaped by the needs of their people, and sustained by the rivers that flowed through the heart of Mesopotamia. They were places where innovation flourished, where writing developed, where trade expanded, and where the earliest forms of government began to take shape. As the cities grew, so too did the complexity of their societies. New social roles emerged, from priests and administrators to merchants, artisans, and laborers. The division of labor became more pronounced, and the daily life of the people became more structured. Yet, despite these changes, the rhythm of life remained deeply connected to the land, to the cycles of planting and harvest, and to the steady flow of the rivers. Imagine now the quiet moments at the end of a long day in one of these early cities. The sun sinking low over the plains, casting a warm golden light across the rooftops. The sounds of the marketplace fading as people return to their homes. The soft glow of oil lamps illuminating the narrow streets. The distant murmur of water flowing through the canals. The air cooling gently as night settles over the land. In these peaceful hours, families gather to share food, to tell stories, and to rest after the day's work. The world outside grows still. The stars appear in the vast sky above, and the city breathes quietly, its people safe within the walls they have built, its fields resting under the watchful gaze of the moon. The rise of these early cities marks a turning point in human history, a moment when people began to live in larger communities, to organize their societies, and to create systems that would endure for thousands of years. Yet this transformation did not happen suddenly. It unfolded slowly, gently, shaped by the patient work of countless individuals, each contributing in small ways to the growth of their world. As we rest here in the calm of ancient Mesopotamia, we can feel the quiet strength of these early civilizations, the steady progress that carried them from simple farming communities to thriving urban centers, the deep connection they maintained with the land and the enduring legacy they left behind. In the next part of our journey, we will explore how these city-states interacted with one another, how their leaders rose to power, how conflicts and alliances shaped their histories, and how the Sumerians continued to innovate, creating new technologies, new forms of writing, and new ways of understanding the world. But for now, we remain here, in the gentle twilight of early Sumer, listening to the soft whisper of the rivers, feeling the calm presence of the ancient cities, and drifting slowly through the quiet beginnings of civilization. As we drift deeper into the unfolding world of ancient Sumer, the landscape around us remains calm and familiar. The wide plains stretching between the rivers, the warm winds moving gently across the fields. Yet the human presence upon this land has grown more complex, shaped not only by the rhythms of nature, but also by the relationships between the growing city-states, each one rising from the earth with its own identity, its own traditions, and its own quiet ambitions. Uruk, Ur, Lagish, Kish, Nippur, and other early cities stood like islands of life in the vast expanse of southern Mesopotamia, each surrounded by fields nourished by carefully tended canals, each guided by its own leaders and its own temple traditions. Though they shared a common culture, a common language, and a common dependence on the rivers, their relationships with one another were shaped by both cooperation and tension, a gentle balance that shifted slowly over generations. In the early days, the distances between the cities were not great, yet the journeys between them could feel long, the paths winding through fields, marshes, and open plains. Merchants traveled these routes carrying grain, wool, pottery, and fish, their footsteps soft on the dusty ground, their boats gliding quietly along the canals and river branches that linked the settlements. Through trade, the cities remained connected, exchanging goods, ideas, and stories, strengthening the bonds that tied them together. But the same rivers that connected them also created challenges. The irrigation systems that sustained each city required constant care, and the flow of water could shift from one season to the next. A canal built by one city might divert water away from another. A flood might damage fields belonging to one community while sparing its neighbor. These small disruptions, though quiet in their beginnings, could grow into disagreements, and disagreements could grow into conflicts. Lajash and Umma, two neighboring city-states, became known for their long and gentle struggle over a fertile stretch of land called the Godiana. The boundary between their territories was marked by canals and fields, and the question of who controlled the water, who tended the land, and who harvested the grain became a source of tension that lasted for generations. The conflict did not erupt suddenly, but unfolded slowly, shaped by the needs of farmers, the decisions of leaders, and the shifting patterns of the rivers. The leaders of Lagish claimed that the land belonged to their city, pointing to ancient agreements and temple records, while the leaders of Umma argued that the fields were theirs to cultivate. Each side believed it was protecting its rightful resources. And so the dispute continued, sometimes quiet, sometimes rising into open conflict, yet always returning to the same gentle struggle over water and soil. Despite these tensions, the cities of Sumer also formed alliances, quiet understandings shaped by shared interests. Trade routes and religious traditions. Nippur, home to the great temple of Enlil, held a special place among the cities. Its spiritual significance, giving it a role as a neutral ground where leaders could meet, discuss their concerns, and seek guidance from the priests who tended the sacred precincts. The calm presence of Nippur helped maintain a sense of unity among the cities, even when disagreements arose. The alliances between the cities were not formal in the way later empires would create treaties. Instead, they were shaped by relationships between leaders, by marriages between families, by shared rituals, and by the quiet understanding that cooperation was necessary for survival. When canals needed repair, neighboring cities sometimes sent workers to help. When trade routes were threatened, cities joined together to protect them. When droughts or floods struck, communities shared grain and resources, knowing that the balance of the region depended on mutual support. Yet the desire for influence also grew slowly within the hearts of the cities. Uruk, with its size and its powerful temple traditions, often sought to guide the region, its leaders claiming a role of stewardship over the surrounding lands. Kish, located farther north, also rose to prominence, its rulers sometimes taking the title of king over all Sumer, a symbolic role that suggested leadership rather than domination, a gentle acknowledgement of authority that shifted from city to city over time. These early claims to leadership were not enforced through conquest in the way later empires would expand. Instead, they were shaped by reputation, by the ability to organize labor, by the success of irrigation projects, and by the respect granted by other cities. A city that managed its resources well, it maintained strong temples, and that supported its people through difficult seasons, naturally gained influence. Its leaders seen as capable guides in a world shaped by uncertainty. As we drift through this landscape of quiet alliances and slow-moving tensions, imagine the soft conversations between envoys traveling from one city to another, their journeys long but peaceful, carrying messages carved into clay tablets, offering gifts of grain, textiles, or crafted goods, seeking agreements that would maintain harmony between the settlements. The air warm around them, the fields stretching outward in gentle rows, the rivers flowing steadily beside their paths. The conflicts that did arise were often brief and limited, shaped by the practical needs of the cities rather than by conquest. A dispute over water might lead to a small skirmish. A disagreement over boundaries might result in a temporary occupation of a field or canal. But the cities understood that their survival depended on the land, the rivers, and the delicate balance between them. And so even in times of tension, they sought resolution, returning to negotiation, ritual, and shared tradition. The priests played an important role in these moments, their voices calm and steady, reminding the leaders of the cities that the gods watched over the land, that harmony was essential, and that the cycles of nature required cooperation. The temples, with their quiet courtyards and sacred spaces, became places where disputes could be softened, where offerings could be made, and where agreements could be renewed. Through these interactions, the cities of Sumer developed a shared identity, a sense of belonging to a larger world shaped by the rivers, the fields, and the ancient traditions that guided their lives. Each city remained distinct, with its own customs and its own quiet ambitions, yet all were bound together by the gentle threads of trade, religion, and the ever-present need to manage the waters that sustained them. And so the relationships between the cities flowed like the rivers themselves, sometimes calm, sometimes shifting, sometimes rising into tension, but always returning to balance, shaped by the slow passage of time, the steady work of countless hands, and the quiet understanding that the land could only flourish when its people found harmony with one another. As we drift further into the quiet world of ancient Sumer, the cities around us continue to grow in both size and complexity, their mud brick walls rising gently from the plains, their canals stretching outward like delicate veins of water. And within these cities, new forms of leadership begin to take shape, emerging slowly from the needs of the people and the rhythms of daily life. Leadership in Sumer was not born from sudden ambition or dramatic conquest, but from the steady responsibilities of managing water, land, and community. The earliest leaders were often priests, individuals who understood the rituals that honored the gods and the practical knowledge needed to guide the people. Over time, these roles expanded, shaped by the growing demands of the cities, until the figure of the Lugal emerged, a leader whose authority rested on both spiritual respect and administrative skill. The Lugal was expected to maintain the canals, to protect the fields, to organize labor for public works, and to ensure that the temples received the offerings needed to keep the gods content. His power was not absolute, but woven gently into the fabric of the city, supported by councils of elders, by priests, and by the quiet trust of the people. Leadership in Sumer was a careful balance, a slow and steady presence rather than a forceful command. Religion remained at the heart of Sumerian life, shaping every aspect of the world. The people believed that the gods lived among them, not in distant heavens, but in the very elements of the land. The rivers were guided by Enki, the winds by Enlil, the fertile earth by Ninhursag, the morning star by Inanna. Each city honored its own patron deity, building temples that rose above the surrounding homes, their stepped platforms reaching toward the sky like gentle mountains of brick. Inside these temples, priests performed rituals to maintain harmony between the human world and the divine. Offerings of grain, fruit, incense, and animals were placed before the altars. Prayers were spoken in soft voices, and sacred objects were tended with care. The temples were not only spiritual centers, but also administrative hubs, where records were kept, resources were stored, and decisions were made. The calm presence of the gods was believed to guide the city, ensuring balance and prosperity. Technology in Sumer developed slowly but steadily, shaped by the needs of the people and the challenges of the land. The potter's wheel allowed artisans to create vessels with smooth, symmetrical forms, their hands moving gently as the clay spun beneath their fingers. The plow, pulled by oxen, made it easier to cultivate the fields, turning the soil in long, even lines, preparing it for the seeds that would grow into barley and wheat. Irrigation systems became more advanced, with canals branching like delicate threads across the landscape, carrying water to distant fields, supporting larger harvests, and allowing the cities to grow. The Sumerians learned to build levees to control floods, to dig reservoirs to store water, and to maintain the canals with careful attention. Their understanding of water management became one of the foundations of their civilization. Writing continued to evolve, the early clay tokens giving way to more complex symbols pressed into tablets. The script known as cuneiform taking shape through careful practice. Scribes spent years learning the signs, their hands steady as they recorded transactions. Offerings and stories, writing became a powerful tool, allowing the cities to manage their resources, preserve their traditions, and communicate across distances. The quiet scratching of styluses on clay became one of the defining sounds of Sumerian culture. Food in ancient Sumer was simple yet nourishing, shaped by the crops that thrived in the fertile soil. Barley was the most important grain, used to make bread, porridge, and beer, a drink that was safer than river water and enjoyed by people of all ages. Wheat was also grown, though in smaller quantities. Dates from the palm trees provided sweetness, their soft flesh eaten fresh or dried. Their sap used to make syrup, their wood used for building. Vegetables such as onions, garlic, leeks, and cucumbers grew in the gardens near the canals, their flavors adding depth to stews cooked slowly over clay ovens. Fish from the rivers and marshes provided protein, their scales glistening in the warm sunlight as fishermen cast their nets. Goats and sheep offered milk, meat, and wool, their gentle bleating a familiar sound in the fields surrounding the cities. Meals were often shared in quiet gatherings, families sitting together in the cool shade of their courtyards, the air filled with the scent of baked bread and simmering stews. Food was not only nourishment, but a reflection of the land, a reminder of the rivers that sustained them and the fields that fed them. The act of eating was woven into the rhythm of daily life, a moment of calm in a world shaped by steady labor. Culture in Sumer was rich and varied, shaped by the daily rhythms of work, worship, and community. Music played an important role, with lyres, flutes, and drums creating soft melodies that drifted through the courtyards during festivals and gatherings. The gentle plucking of strings, the quiet tapping of drums, and the breathy notes of flutes filled the air with a sense of calm and connection. Stories were told in the evenings, passed from one generation to the next, tales of gods, heroes, and the creation of the world, their words flowing gently like the rivers that sustained the land. These stories were not written at first, but spoken, their rhythms shaped by memory and tradition, their meanings woven into the hearts of the people. Artisans crafted intricate cylinder seals, small carved stones that left detailed impressions when rolled across clay. These seals served as signatures, symbols of identity and ownership, their designs filled with images of animals, gods, and scenes from daily life. The people wore simple clothing made from wool, woven into long garments that draped softly over the body. The fabric dyed in muted tones using natural pigments from plants and minerals. Life in Sumer moved at a slow and steady pace, shaped by the rising and setting of the sun, the cycles of planting and harvest, and the gentle flow of the rivers. The people worked together, shared their resources, and honored the gods who watched over them. Their world was one of quiet industry, deep tradition, and a growing sense of identity, each city contributing its own unique voice to the larger tapestry of Mesopotamian culture. And as we drift through this ancient landscape, we can feel the calm presence of the people who shaped the first civilization, their hands guiding the plow, shaping the clay, weaving the cloth, their voices rising softly in prayer, their footsteps moving gently along the dusty paths that connected their homes, their temples, and their fields, their world unfolding slowly, shaped by patience, cooperation, and the quiet strength of community. As we drift further into the ancient world of Sumer, the cities around us continue to expand in both size and complexity, their mud brick walls rising gently from the plains, their canals stretching outward like quiet lifelines across the landscape. And within these growing settlements, the patterns of life deepen, shaped by the slow evolution of leadership, the rhythms of trade, the emergence of organized conflict, the blossoming of art, the refinement of writing, and the calm routines of daily existence. The world of Sumer is no longer a collection of small farming villages, but a network of thriving city-states, each with its own identity, its own traditions, and its own quiet ambitions. Kriegführung in Sumer developed gradually, shaped not by conquest or empire, but by the practical needs of protecting land, water, and community. The earliest conflicts were small, involving groups of men who normally worked as farmers, builders, or herders, their weapons simple, crafted from wood, stone, and copper, their shields woven from reeds, their helmets made from leather, their movements steady and deliberate as they defended the boundaries of their city. The men who fought were not soldiers by profession, but ordinary people called upon when the land required protection. These early warriors gathered when summoned by the Lugal or by the Council of Elders, leaving their fields and workshops to protect the canals, the granaries, and the sacred spaces of their city. Their battles were often brief, shaped by disputes over irrigation channels, farmland, or trade routes, the goal rarely being destruction, but rather the restoration of balance, the protection of resources, and the reaffirmation of boundaries. The land itself was too precious to be damaged, the canals too essential to be neglected, and so even in conflict, the people of Sumer understood the need for restraint. As the centuries passed, the organization of these forces became more structured, the cities building simple fortifications, training groups of men to respond quickly to threats, and developing strategies suited to the flat, open terrain of the plains, the armies marched in tight formations, carrying spears, axes, and bows. Their shields held close, their steps slow and steady, their presence a reminder that even in a world shaped by cooperation, conflict could arise from the shifting patterns of the rivers and the needs of the land. The leaders of the cities learned to negotiate, to form alliances, and to settle disputes through ritual and diplomacy. Yet the quiet tension between neighboring settlements remained a constant presence. Handel played an equally important role in shaping the world of Sumer, the rivers serving as gentle highways that connected the cities to one another and to distant lands. Merchants traveled along the waterways in boats made from bundled reeds, their cargoes filled with grain, wool, fish, pottery, and woven cloth. The boats gliding quietly across the surface of the water, their reflections shimmering in the warm sunlight. The rivers carried not only goods, but also ideas, stories, and traditions, weaving the cities together in a network of exchange. Trade routes extended far beyond the plains of Mesopotamia, reaching the mountains of Anatolia, the deserts of Arabia, and the distant lands of the Indus Valley. From these regions came materials that were scarce in Sumer: timber for building, copper for tools, lapis lazuli for ornaments, and precious stones for seals. The arrival of these goods brought new colors, new textures, and new ideas into the cities, enriching their culture and expanding their understanding of the world. The merchants who traveled these routes became bridges between cultures, carrying with them the quiet knowledge of distant lands. Markets within the cities were calm but lively places, filled with the soft murmur of voices, the gentle clatter of pottery, and the scent of fresh bread and dried fish. Merchants arranged their goods in neat rows, their hands moving slowly as they measured grain, weighed wool, or exchanged clay tablets that recorded transactions. Trade was not only an economic activity, but a social one, a moment when people gathered, shared news, and strengthened the bonds of community. The marketplace was a place where the rhythms of the city came together, where the work of farmers, artisans, and merchants intertwined. Constant Sumer reflected the quiet beauty of daily life, shaped by the materials available and the traditions passed down through generations. Artisans carved intricate designs into cylinder seals, small stones that served as personal signatures, their surfaces filled with images of gods, animals, and scenes from daily life. These seals were rolled across clay to leave impressions, each one unique, each one a reflection of the identity of its owner. The seals were used to mark ownership, to seal containers, and to authenticate documents, their designs becoming a form of storytelling, a visual language that captured the essence of Sumerian culture. Sculptors shaped figures from clay and stone, their forms simple yet expressive, their eyes wide, their hands clasped in prayer, their bodies adorned with patterned garments. These statues were placed in temples as offerings, their presence a symbol of devotion, their stillness a reminder of the calm relationship between the people and their gods. The statues often represented worshippers, their hands folded in eternal reverence, their faces serene, their posture humble. The art of Sumer was not meant to impress but to honor. To reflect the quiet dignity of life, pottery was both practical and artistic. Vessels shaped on the potter's wheel with smooth, flowing lines, their surfaces decorated with gentle patterns, their forms designed to hold grain, oil, water, or beer. The potter's wheel itself was a quiet revolution, allowing artisans to create symmetrical shapes with ease, their hands guiding the clay as it spun beneath their fingers. The movement steady, rhythmic, almost meditative. The pottery of Sumer became known for its simplicity, its elegance, and its connection to the daily needs of the people. Skriftsprache continued to evolve, becoming one of the most significant achievements of Sumerian culture. The early pictographs gradually transformed into abstract symbols, each one representing a sound, a word, or an idea. Scribes trained for years to master the script, their hands steady as they pressed the stylus into soft clay, creating tablets that recorded everything from trade agreements to hymns. From administrative lists to myths, writing allowed the cities to manage their resources with precision, to preserve their traditions, and to communicate across distances. The quiet scratching of styluses on clay became a familiar sound in the courtyards of temples and administrative buildings, a sound that marked the beginning of recorded history. The scribes sat in shaded rooms, their tablets drying in the warm air, their work essential to the functioning of the city. Writing became a tool of leadership, a tool of religion, and a tool of culture. The written word allowed the people of Sumer to look beyond the present moment, to preserve the past, and to plan for the future. Verdagsliv in Sumer unfolded in a gentle rhythm, shaped by the rising and setting of the sun, the cycles of planting and harvest, and the steady flow of the rivers. Families lived in homes built from mud bricks, their walls cool in the heat of the day, their courtyards shaded by wooden beams and woven mats, the air filled with the scent of bread baking in clay ovens, the soft murmur of conversation, and the distant sounds of animals in the fields. The homes were simple, yet filled with the quiet warmth of daily life. Children played in the narrow streets, their laughter drifting softly through the air, their games simple, shaped by imagination and the materials around them. Small clay figurines, reed toys, and smooth stones collected from the riverbanks. Women tended the household, grinding grain, weaving cloth, and preparing meals, their movements steady and practiced, their days filled with tasks that sustained the family. The rhythm of their work woven into the rhythm of the city. Men worked in the fields, the workshops, or the markets, their hands guiding the plow, shaping the clay, carving the wood, or casting the metal. Their labor essential to the life of the city, yet carried out with a calm acceptance of the rhythms of nature. The people of Sumer understood that their world depended on balance, on cooperation, and on the steady work of countless hands. The fields required constant care, the canals constant maintenance, the workshops constant attention. Festivals brought moments of joy and celebration, the temples filled with music, offerings, and processions, the people gathering to honor the gods, to share food, and to strengthen the bonds of community. The air filled with the sound of lyres and drums, the scent of incense rising into the warm evening sky, the city glowing softly in the light of oil lamps. The festivals marked the turning of the seasons, the cycles of the moon, and the rhythms of the land. And through all of this, the rivers continued to flow, the fields continued to grow, and the cities continued to rise. Their people shaping the first civilization with patience, creativity, and quiet determination. Their world unfolding slowly, layer by layer, like the soft sediment left behind by the gentle floodwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates. Their lives woven into the fabric of the land, their stories carried forward by the steady passage of time. As we drift deeper into the ancient world of Sumer, the cities around us continue to rise from the plains with a quiet and steady confidence, their shapes becoming more defined, their structures more ambitious, their presence more deeply woven into the landscape. The architecture of Sumer growing slowly from simple mud brick homes into monumental temples, towering platforms, and carefully planned urban spaces. Each building reflecting the needs, beliefs, and aspirations of the people who shaped them. Each structure a testament to the patience and ingenuity of a civilization, learning to build not only for the present moment, but for generations to come. The earliest homes in Sumer were modest, built from sun-dried mud bricks formed by mixing clay, straw, and water, the bricks laid in gentle rows, their surfaces smoothed by hand, the walls rising just high enough to offer shelter from the heat and wind. The roof supported by wooden beams, and covered with reeds or packed earth. These homes were arranged around small courtyards, open spaces where families cooked, worked, and gathered. The courtyard shaded by woven mats, the air filled with the scent of bread baking and grain drying in the sun. The simple architecture reflecting the quiet rhythm of daily life. As the cities grew, the architecture became more complex. The streets winding between clusters of homes, workshops, and storage buildings, the walls of the city rising higher. Built from layers of mud brick reinforced with wooden supports, the gates guarded by simple watchtowers, the canals flowing gently through the city, their banks lined with stone or packed clay, the bridges crossing them made from wooden planks or bundles of reeds. The entire city shaped by the careful balance between water, land, and human effort. The layout of the city reflecting both practicality and tradition. The most impressive structures in Sumer were the temples, rising above the surrounding homes like quiet mountains of brick. Their stepped platforms known as ziggurats becoming symbols of the connection between the human world and the divine. The ziggurats were built layer by layer, each level slightly smaller than the one below, creating a gentle slope that reached toward the sky. The bricks carefully shaped, dried, and placed. The outer walls sometimes coated with plaster to protect them from the elements. The structure standing firm against the heat, the wind, and the slow passage of time. At the top of the ziggurat stood the temple itself, a sacred space where priests performed rituals, offered food and incense to the gods, and tended the sacred objects that symbolized the presence of the divine. The air around the temple filled with the soft glow of oil lamps, the scent of burning incense, and the quiet murmur of prayers. The ziggurat was not a place for the common people to enter, but a symbol of the city's devotion, a reminder that the gods watched over every aspect of life. The temple serving as both a spiritual and administrative center. Mythology in Sumer was woven deeply into the fabric of daily existence. The people believing that the world was shaped by powerful gods who governed the forces of nature, the cycles of time, and the fate of humanity. Each city honored its own patron deity, the god or goddess believed to protect the land, guide the people, and ensure the prosperity of the fields. The temples dedicated to these deities becoming the spiritual heart of the city, their presence shaping the identity of the community. Inanna, the goddess of love, fertility, and the morning star, was honored in Uruk, her presence believed to bring life to the fields, strength to the people, and beauty to the world. Her myths telling of her journeys to the underworld, her battles with storms, her power over kingship and desire. Enlil, the god of wind and breath, was worshipped in Nibur. His temple considered one of the most sacred places in Sumer. His influence seen in the gentle breezes that cooled the plains and the storms that swept across the land. Enki, the god of water and wisdom, was honored in Eridu. His presence felt in the rivers, the canals, and the quiet flow of knowledge, his myths telling of creation, magic, and the shaping of the world from the waters of chaos. The myths of Sumer told stories of creation, of gods shaping the world from the swirling waters of the primordial sea, of humans formed from clay to serve the divine, of great floods that reshaped the land, of heroic journeys undertaken by kings and demigods. These stories were passed down through generations, spoken in the evenings, recited during festivals, and eventually written on clay tablets by scribes, their words flowing like the rivers that sustained the land, their meanings woven into the hearts of the people. Congar began to emerge as the cities grew more complex, their roles evolving from simple leaders into figures of authority who guided the city in both practical and spiritual matters. The earliest kings were often associated with the temples, their power rooted in their connection to the gods, their authority seen as a reflection of divine will. The people believing that the king was chosen to maintain order, protect the land, and ensure the prosperity of the city. The kings serving as a bridge between the human world and the divine. The kings of Sumer were responsible for organizing labor for public works, maintaining the irrigation systems, overseeing trade, and protecting the city from external threats. Their palaces built near the temples, their walls decorated with carvings, their courtyards filled with officials, scribes, and workers. The palace becoming a center of administration, a place where decisions were made, records kept, and resources distributed. The king's authority extending into every aspect of life, yet always tied to the needs of the land and the will of the gods. Some kings became known for their achievements, their names preserved in lists and inscriptions, their deeds remembered in stories and hymns. Gilgamesh of Uruk, though wrapped in myth, was believed to have been a real king, his story blending history and legend, his journey reflecting the human search for meaning, power, and understanding, his epic becoming one of the earliest great works of literature. Other kings focused on building canals, expanding trade, or strengthening the city's defenses, their contributions shaping the world in quiet but lasting ways. Konomi in Sumer was rooted in agriculture, the fertile soil of the plains providing the foundation for the city's prosperity, the fields stretching outward in long, neat rows, watered by the canals that carried life-giving water from the rivers, the farmers working from sunrise to sunset, planting barley and wheat, tending the crops, and harvesting the grain that fed the city. The surplus grain stored in large communal granaries, their walls thick and cool, their contents carefully recorded by scribes, the granaries becoming symbols of stability and security. The economy also relied on livestock, sheep and goats grazing on the outskirts of the city, their wool used for weaving, their milk for food, their meat for special occasions, cattle used for plowing, their strength essential for preparing the fields, fish caught from the rivers and marshes, their scales shimmering in the sunlight, their presence a reminder of the abundance provided by the water, the animals forming an essential part of the economic and cultural life of the city. Craftsmen played an important role in the economy, their workshops filled with the quiet sounds of tools shaping clay, wood, stone, and metal, potters creating vessels for storage and cooking, weavers producing cloth from wool and flax, metal workers shaping copper into tools and ornaments, carpenters building furniture, doors, and boats, each craft contributing to the life of the city, each artisan adding their skill to the growing complexity of Sumerian society, their work reflecting both practicality and artistry. Trade expanded the economy beyond the boundaries of the city, merchants traveling along the rivers and across the plains, exchanging goods with neighboring settlements and distant lands. The trade routes bringing new materials, new ideas, and new opportunities. The merchants recording their transactions on clay tablets, their seals marking the authenticity of their goods, their journeys connecting Sumer to a wider world. The flow of goods creating a network of exchange that stretched across continents. The economy was managed through a combination of temple administration, palace oversight, and private enterprise. The temples controlling large portions of land, organizing labor, and distributing resources. The palaces overseeing public works, trade, and defense. Private merchants and artisans contributing to the flow of goods and services. The entire system functioning through cooperation, record-keeping, and the steady rhythm of daily work. The economy reflecting the balance between communal responsibility and individual skill. Architecture, mythology, kingship, and economy were not separate aspects of life in Sumer, but interconnected threads woven into a single tapestry, each influencing the others, each shaping the world in subtle and profound ways. The architecture reflecting the beliefs of the people, the myths guiding the actions of the kings, the economy supporting the construction of temples and palaces. the kings ensuring the prosperity of the land, the entire civilization moving forward with a quiet determination, shaped by the rivers, the soil, and the steady work of countless hands. And as we drift through this ancient landscape, we can feel the calm presence of the people who built the first cities, their lives unfolding slowly, their stories carried by the wind, their legacy resting in the bricks, the tablets, and the myths that have survived through the ages, their world shaped by patience, cooperation, and the gentle rhythm of the land, their civilization rising quietly from the plains, guided by the gods, sustained by the rivers, and remembered through the soft echoes of time. As we drift deeper into the ancient world of Sumer, the cities around us continue to rise from the plains with a quiet and steady confidence, their shapes becoming more defined, their structures more ambitious, their presence more deeply woven into the landscape. The architecture of Sumer growing slowly from simple mud brick homes into monumental temples, towering platforms, and carefully planned urban spaces, each building reflecting the needs, beliefs, and aspirations of the people who shaped them, each structure a testament to the patience and ingenuity of a civilization, learning to build not only for the present moment, but for generations to come. The earliest homes in Sumer were modest, built from sun-dried mud bricks formed by mixing clay, straw, and water, the bricks laid in gentle rows, their surfaces smoothed by hand, the walls rising just high enough to offer shelter from the heat and wind, the roofs supported by wooden beams and covered with reeds or packed earth. These homes were arranged around small courtyards, open spaces where families cooked, worked, and gathered. The courtyard shaded by woven mats, the air filled with the scent of bread baking and grain in the sun. The simple architecture reflecting the quiet rhythm of daily life. As the cities grew, the architecture became more complex. The streets winding between clusters of homes, workshops, and storage buildings, the walls of the city rising higher, built from layers of mud brick reinforced with wooden supports, the gates guarded by simple watchtowers, the canals flowing gently through the city, their banks lined with stone or packed clay, the bridges crossing them made from wooden planks or bundles of reeds. The entire city shaped by the careful balance between water, land, and human effort. The layout of the city reflecting both practicality and tradition. The most impressive structures in Sumer were the temples, rising above the surrounding homes like quiet mountains of brick. Their stepped platforms, known as ziggurats, becoming symbols of the connection between the human world and the divine. The ziggurats were built layer by layer, each level slightly smaller than the one below, creating a gentle slope that reached toward the sky. The bricks carefully shaped, dried, and placed, the outer walls sometimes coated with plaster to protect them from the elements, the structure standing firm against the heat, the wind, and the slow passage of time. At the top of the ziggurat stood the temple itself, a sacred space where priests performed rituals, offered food and incense to the gods, and tended the sacred objects that symbolized the presence of the divine. The air around the temple filled with the soft glow of oil lamps, the scent of burning incense, and the quiet murmur of prayers. The ziggurat was not a place for the common people to enter, but a symbol of the city's devotion, a reminder that the gods watched over every aspect of life. The temple serving as both a spiritual and administrative center. Mythology in Sumer was woven deeply into the fabric of daily existence. The people believing that the world was shaped by powerful gods who governed the forces of nature, the cycles of time, and the fate of humanity. Each city honored its own patron deity, the god or goddess believed to protect the land, guide the people, and ensure the prosperity of the fields. The temples dedicated to these deities becoming the spiritual heart of the city, their presence shaping the identity of the community. Inanna, the goddess of love, fertility, and the morning star, was honored in Uruk. Her presence believed to bring life to the fields, strength to the people, and beauty to the world. Her myths telling of her journeys to the underworld, her battles with storms, her power over kingship and desire. Enlil, the god of wind and breath, was worshipped in Nippur. His temple considered one of the most sacred places in Sumer. His influence seen in the gentle breezes that cooled the plains and the storms that swept across the land. Enki, the god of water and wisdom, was honored in Eridu. His presence felt in the rivers, the canals, and the quiet flow of knowledge, his myths telling of creation, magic, and the shaping of the world from the waters of chaos. The myths of Sumer told stories of creation, of gods shaping the world from the swirling waters of the primordial sea, of humans formed from clay to serve the divine, of great floods that reshaped the land, of heroic journeys undertaken by kings and demigods. These stories were passed down through generations, spoken in the evenings, recited during festivals, and eventually written on clay tablets by scribes, their words flowing like the rivers that sustained the land, their meanings woven into the hearts of the people. Congar began to emerge as the cities grew more complex, their roles evolving from simple leaders into figures of authority who guided the city in both practical and spiritual matters. The earliest kings were often associated with the temples, their power rooted in their connection to the gods, their authority seen as a reflection of divine will, the people believing that the king was chosen to maintain order, protect the land, and ensure the prosperity of the city, the king serving as a bridge between the human world and the divine. The kings of Sumer were responsible for organizing labor for public works, maintaining the irrigation systems, overseeing trade, and protecting the city from external threats. Their palaces built near the temples, their walls decorated with carvings, their courtyards filled with officials, scribes, and workers. The palace becoming a center of administration, a place where decisions were made, records kept, and resources distributed. The king's authority extending into every aspect of life, yet always tied to the needs of the land and the will of the gods. Some kings became known for their achievements, their names preserved in lists and inscriptions, their deeds remembered in stories and hymns. Gilgamesh of Uruk, though wrapped in myth, was believed to have been a real king, his story blending history and legend, his journey reflecting the human search for meaning, power, and understanding, his epic becoming one of the earliest great works of literature. Other kings focused on building canals, expanding trade, or strengthening the city's defenses, their contributions shaping the world in quiet but lasting ways. Konomi in Sumer was rooted in agriculture, the fertile soil of the plains providing the foundation for the city's prosperity, the fields stretching outward in long, neat rows, watered by the canals that carried life-giving water from the rivers, the farmers working from sunrise to sunset, planting barley and wheat, tending the crops, and harvesting the grain that fed the city, the surplus grain stored in large communal granaries, their walls thick and cool, their contents carefully recorded by scribes, the granaries becoming symbols of stability and security. The economy also relied on livestock, sheep and goats grazing on the outskirts of the city, their wool used for weaving, their milk for food, their meat for special occasions, cattle used for plowing, their strength essential for preparing the fields, fish caught from the rivers and marshes, their scales shimmering in the sunlight, their presence a reminder of the abundance provided by the water, the animals forming an essential part of the economic and cultural life of the city. Craftsmen played an important role in the economy, their workshops filled with the quiet sounds of tools shaping clay, wood, stone, and metal, potters creating vessels for storage and cooking, weavers producing cloth from wool and flax, metalworkers shaping copper into tools and ornaments, carpenters building furniture, doors, and boats, each craft contributing to the life of the city, each artisan adding their skill to the growing complexity of Sumerian society, their work reflecting both practicality and artistry. Trade expanded the economy beyond the boundaries of the city, merchants traveling along the rivers and across the plains, exchanging goods with neighboring settlements and distant lands, the trade routes bringing new materials, new ideas, and new opportunities. The merchants recording their transactions on clay tablets, their seals marking the authenticity of their goods, their journeys connecting Sumer to a wider world. The flow of goods creating a network of exchange that stretched across continents. The economy was managed through a combination of temple administration, palace oversight, and private enterprise. The temples controlling large portions of land, organizing labor, and distributing resources. The palaces overseeing public works, trade, and defense. Private merchants and artisans contributing to the flow of goods and services. The entire system functioning through cooperation, record-keeping, and a steady rhythm of daily work. The economy reflecting the balance between communal responsibility and individual skill. Yet even as the civilization grew stronger, new challenges began to emerge. Challenges that unfolded slowly, quietly, like the shifting of the riverbanks or the gradual rise of silt in the canals. Challenges that would eventually reshape the world of Sumer. The soil that once produced abundant harvests began to show signs of strain. The irrigation systems, though essential for life, gradually leaving behind salt in the soil, the water evaporating under the hot sun, the salt remaining year after year, the fields becoming less fertile, the crops growing weaker, the harvest shrinking, the farmers working harder for less, the land slowly losing its strength. At the same time, the political landscape began to shift. The city-states, once loosely connected through trade, religion, and shared culture, began to compete more fiercely for resources, for influence, for control of the canals and the fertile lands, the kings seeking to expand their power, their armies growing larger, their ambitions growing stronger, the conflicts becoming more frequent, more organized, more destructive, the quiet disputes over water turning into battles for dominance, the cities rising and falling in cycles of power. New peoples began to appear along the edges of Sumer, drawn by the wealth of the cities, the fertility of the land, and the opportunities for trade. Some came peacefully, settling in the outskirts, working as laborers, traders, or craftsmen. Others came in waves of migration, seeking new homes, new fields, new lives, their presence adding new layers to the culture, new languages, new customs, new ideas. The world of Sumer becoming more diverse, more dynamic, more complex. Among these new peoples were the Akkadians, speakers of a Semitic language, living in the northern regions of Mesopotamia, their settlements growing, their leaders gaining influence, their culture blending with that of the Sumerians, their presence becoming more prominent, their ambitions growing quietly, their leaders watching the city-states of Sumer with interest. Eventually, a powerful leader emerged among the Akkadians, a man named Sargon, who rose from humble origins to become one of the most influential figures in ancient history. He conquered the city-states of Sumer one by one, uniting them under his rule, creating the first empire in recorded history, the Akkadian Empire, the cities of Sumer becoming part of a larger political structure. Their kings replaced by governors, their temples still active, but their autonomy diminished. Their culture preserved but transformed. After the fall of the Akkadian Empire, the Sumerian cities experienced a brief revival, a period known as the Neo-Sumerian or Ur III period, centered around the city of Ur, the kings of Ur rebuilding the temples, restoring the canals, reorganizing the economy, strengthening the administration, their rule bringing a sense of renewal, of order, of cultural pride. The Sumerian language flourishing once more, the scribes producing thousands of tablets, the art becoming more refined, the architecture more ambitious, the society more structured. Yet even this revival could not last forever. New peoples continued to move into the region. New powers rose in the north and east. The climate began to shift. The rivers changed their courses. The fields became harder to cultivate. The political unity weakened. The economy strained under the weight of administration. The cities became vulnerable. The balance that sustained Sumer for millennia began to falter. Eventually, the Sumerian city-states were absorbed into larger empires, first by the Elamites, then by the Amorites, who established the old Babylonian Empire. The Sumerian language gradually replaced in daily life by Akkadian, though preserved in temples and scholarly traditions. The Sumerian gods absorbed into new pantheons, their myths retold in new forms, their temples rebuilt under new rulers. The culture transformed, but not forgotten. The civilization of Sumer did not disappear suddenly. It faded slowly, gently, like the soft receding of floodwaters after the river has overflowed, its influence carried forward by the peoples who inherited its land, its writing, its stories, its architecture, its understanding of the world, the legacy of Sumer living on in Babylon, in Assyria, in Persia, in the cultures that followed. The first civilization becoming the foundation upon which many others were built. Its quiet strength remembered in the stories we tell, the knowledge we preserve, and the civilizations that rise long after its own, has faded into the gentle twilight of the ancient world. As the long journey through the ancient world of Sumer comes to a gentle close, we drift once more across the quiet plains where the first cities rose, the soft glow of distant oil lamps fading into the warm darkness, the rivers flowing with the same calm rhythm they have carried for thousands of years, their waters whispering the stories of the people who shaped the earliest chapters of human history. We have walked among the mud-brick homes and the towering ziggurats. We have listened to the myths whispered in temple courtyards. We have watched the kings guide their cities with steady hands. We have seen the farmers tend their fields, the scribes press their symbols into clay, the merchants travel along the winding rivers, each life a small but essential thread in the vast tapestry of the first civilization. And now, as the echoes of their world settle softly around us, we allow the weight of time to rest gently on our shoulders. The knowledge that countless generations lived, worked, dreamed, and hoped beneath these same skies. Their footsteps long faded, their voices long quiet, yet their presence still felt in the foundations of everything that came after. The night deepened slowly over the ancient land, the warm air cooling, the stars appearing one by one above the plains, the constellations shining just as they did for the people of Sumer, guiding their travelers, inspiring their stories, watching over their cities as they drifted into sleep. The same stars now watching over you, offering the same quiet comfort, the same gentle reminder that you too are part of a long and peaceful continuum. Let your breath slow as the rivers slow. Let your thoughts settle like silt drifting to the bottom of a calm canal. Let the quiet rhythm of ancient life wrap around you like a soft blanket, the steady heartbeat of a world that moved at the pace of the sun, the seasons, and the flowing water. You have traveled far tonight, across thousands of years, across the rise and fall of cities, across the stories of gods and kings, across the gentle beginnings of civilization. And now, as the journey comes to rest, you can allow yourself to rest as well. There is nothing more you need to do, nothing more you need to think about. The world can be quiet now. The night can be soft. The ancient rivers can carry your thoughts away, leaving only calm, only stillness. only the gentle warmth of sleep rising slowly within you. So close your eyes. Let the last traces of the ancient world drift into the distance. Let the calm of Sumer settle over you like the cool shade of a temple courtyard. Let the quiet of the night guide you gently toward rest. Sleep well, sleep deeply, sleep peacefully. Good night. And may the calm of the ancient world stay with you as you drift into dreams.